förklaring till varje lek. Det finns en skönhet i alla oss som vet, som vet. Du behöver inte gömma dig längre. Kom fram, kom fram. Jag vill inte glömma dig längre.
Never Mind the Buzzwords is a community event from Jigsaw Better Business. Taking place bi-monthly, its aim is to build a community of businesses and professionals where you can learn, share and connect. It's about going beyond the jargon and coming away from each session with knowledge, tangible tools, tips, strategies, and hopefully an extended network. Each event is focused either on people or a process. In the process sessions, we talk about how we deliver value in our business. Topics here include lean tools and thinking, operational excellence, sustainability, and digital transformation. In the people sessions, we look beyond the process to the who, discussing topics like leadership, teams, culture, and professional development. Never Mind the Buzzwords isn't just an event that you attend, it's an event to participate in. So get involved in the conversation, put your camera on if you can, share your thoughts, ideas or questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. And don't forget to stay in touch. We have a LinkedIn group where we upload resources and recordings from this community. And if you follow Never Mind the Buzzwords on Eventbrite, you'll be notified whenever we post a new event.
Good morning. I have to say, I think 11 o'clock is a much better time than 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock for a webinar. I've done several webinars this week so far, and every time I do one at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, I start by saying good morning, because it's such a strange time of the day. So I think 11 o'clock should be the rule going forward. So I'm not getting that wrong to start with. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have you all here. A lot of interest in this topic again. A lot of people coming in to see and to hear Rebecca from Tírlán share her story about measuring and improving deployment with maturity assessments in Tírlán, or which is the new name, and Rebecca can fill you in more on that as she goes through her presentation today. Delighted to have Rebecca here, sharing what's going on for her and how they're doing things in Tirlán. I'll bring Rebecca in now shortly in a second. Rebecca is the business excellence specialist in Tirlán, based out of Kilkenny, and she's been in this role for quite a number of years. I mean, in this lean space for quite a number of years. So I'm delighted to have her here today. I'm delighted to have her sharing. But I might just hand over to you, Rebecca.
Yep,
no problem. Start by introducing yourself before you pop on with your slides.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Stuart. So I suppose, look, you can see my name in the bottom corner. My name is Rebecca Mahon. I'm thrilled to be here kind of today to talk about, I suppose, the maturity assessment and kind of the business excellence model we have in Tirlán. Just, I suppose, kind of context and background for myself. I've been in Tirlán for about 5 years now. During this time, I've had really good opportunities to kind of grow and develop in the kind of continuous improvement and lean areas of things. I suppose my journey kind of started out about 5 years ago in Mahon, in the UHT facility we had up there. So I was actually in quality operations there. And during this time, I got the opportunity to take part in a yellow belt. I suppose this is kind of what sparked my interest in lean. It was kind of the first I'd ever heard of it, but something just really kind of clicked with me. And I suppose the role that I had at the time, I was able to go on then and do the green belt, so kind of further my skills in kind of the continuous improvement methodologies and kind of using it in more bigger projects then in what I was working on. I suppose fast forward now, I'm a business excellence specialist now in Tirlán, so supporting kind of different areas. So at the minute, I'm supporting the agri operations sites. So that's 2 feed mills, one in Portlaoise, one in Clonroach, and then the food grade oats as well in Portlaoise. And then I'm also supporting supply chain functions like integrated planning and logistics as well. I suppose at the minute I'm in the second year of doing a master's in lean enterprise excellence.
Hold on, Rebecca. Hold on a second. I mean, that was a very long list. I think people are still making notes here or scrambling to see where the recording is going to be. That is a long list. And you're doing a master's, is that right?
I know my mom always asks me when will I ever lie down, but I haven't had an answer for her yet. So
Oh, sure. What was it they say? You'll be a long time dead. I often say I went back to college as a mature student, although I still don't identify myself as mature. But I went back to college as a mature student, but I should say is I went to college because I barely went to school first time round, let alone go to college. So yeah, a return to education probably might be the right way to do it. But once you start, it's hard to stop, I think, is it?
Yeah, I think like especially with the kind of I suppose the lean courses, because like the yellow belt and the green belt and I suppose the masters that I'm doing now, like they're all kind of building on each other. So like when I did the yellow belt straight away, I knew I wanted to go on and do the green belt, and you know I could see the real kind of hands-on use that I could get out of it. So yeah, it was yeah something I would pursue. Ronan there,
So
yeah, I suppose being cards also helped.
owning the team were inspiring you down to start on this journey. And I know you're in you're in SETU at the moment, doing the master's program down there, which is one of the many universities and colleges in Ireland doing third level programs in lean, and they're just growing in popularity. More and more diverse people coming into them as well. I see a couple of names on the call here of people who would recognize from Waterford as well. So that's great. You're very welcome, Rebecca. Thanks a million for that. I'm going to take a break now. After listening to your long list of achievements and busyness, Rebecca, if you have a camera, a movable camera on your screen, you might just tilt it forward so we can. You're kind of low on the. Perfect. We can see more of you now. That's great.
Perfect.
I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so yeah, I suppose look, and one thing I kind of have to stop myself from saying in the second year, I keep saying I'm only doing the masters or only doing the thesis now, but yeah, so it's certainly a challenge, all right. Then yeah, I suppose look, why am I on here today talking about maturity assessments? And I'm sure there's probably a good few people who are wondering what a maturity assessment is. Within, I suppose, my team in business excellence in Tirlán, I'm the lead on the maturity assessment initiative. So I'm kind of overseeing the process, I suppose, making sure we're hitting the milestones each year, and then looking at ways to improve it itself, then to make sure, I suppose, the function of it is to determine the lean implementation progress across our sites in Tirlán, and then the maturity assessment kind of helps us measure that then really. So I suppose that's kind of where we're going with the title, measuring and improving. But yeah, so I suppose ultimately the goal of a maturity assessment is to create that kind of culture of kind of excellence and give us the signpost during the journey of where to kind of go next. So that's kind of it, I suppose, in a basic, too long didn't read kind of format.
That's great. Now you've some slides you're going to share with us. Is that right?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through kind of Tirlán first, because I suppose it's a new name to ourselves and to everyone. So look, I suppose we were formerly Glanbia Ireland. Our name changed last year, so we became a fully co-op owned organisation. We focus in kind of 3 areas of operations. So we have dairy processing. So this is kind of more business to business area. So this is ingredients like cheese, powders, and we have the 4 plants in Wexford, Bellevue, Ballyragget, and Virginia. Then we have the consumer foods division, which is probably a bit more familiar to people. So these would be the brands like Avonmore, Kilmeaden, your soups and different things like that you'd see in supermarkets. And then we have the agribusiness side of the house. So again, people might be familiar, depending if we've any green fingers on the call. So your Tirlán Country Life stores, there's about 52 branches of them across the country. Then the feed mills for kind of livestock needs and other kind of pieces that way. So all in all, I suppose on the map there with the various kind of points, we have 2,200 employees kind of roughly across our 14 manufacturing sites, and then the 52 retail branches then as well. So I suppose what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start from the basics, I suppose. So I'm going to go through what lean is and just kind of, I suppose, build it up from there as we kind of go through the discussion. So I suppose if you were to ask me to explain lean in as short as way possible, I'd say it's all about kind of adding value and eliminating waste. So I suppose it came about in Japan originally. So there was manufacturers there who I suppose had limited resources, and there was a lot of competition in the domestic market. So they, I suppose, came up with this kind of core idea around eliminating waste in their processes, streamlining them to make sure that they're meeting customer needs, which would be obviously kind of the product requirements and the delivery time requirements and things like that. So I suppose lean then kind of developed out of those principles that the Japanese manufacturers had developed. And it's, again, you know, we look at, you know, what in a process, what's adding value to the process and what's not adding value to the process. And it's all about increasing and improving your value add piece, and then reducing or eliminating any non-value add activities, with the ultimate goal then of improving product quality, you know, less defects in your process, and then essentially delivering what the customer wants when the customer wants it. So just up on the screen there, I have kind of a few benefits just around, you know, why would you bother with doing lean? So look, it's about looking at increasing your value add activities, increasing the product quality, you know, that kind of increases customer satisfaction. And actually at the minute I'm reading a book, Atomic Habits, and it has an interesting piece about lean there, and how kind of I suppose the lean manufacturing element in, say, Japanese television manufacturers versus the American ones actually over time led to them increasing, I suppose, their kind of customer percentage in the American economy and that as well. So I suppose when you gain a reputation then of having good quality products, you increase your kind of market holding then as well. So increases agility. So again, I suppose, look, we're in very changeable, uncertain times. You know, being able to pivot and adapt to these changes is really important as well for businesses. Employee engagement then, you know, that you've got people actually engaged, trying to improve what they're doing. And then obviously we have environmental benefits then as well. So this is kind of coming through, you know, reducing, I suppose, the resources that you're using. You're reducing the amount of defects, which kind of turn into waste then, and you're reducing non-value add activities. And I suppose at the base of all that, you're reducing your costs. So yeah, I suppose, I don't know.
I think I was just sorry, I was trying to unmute myself, Rebecca, there. I think that it's great to see lean referenced in a book like Atomic Habits that's become so mainstream and so popular, that it's bringing kind of perhaps a new audience to lean. And what is this built-in quality? What is this, you know, what is this concept that they talk about in Japan, the manufacturing, and people are seeing it in terms of habits and behavior. And I mean, I've seen it in the social sciences before. A popular writer writes about an academic subject, and they're the ones who gain a lot of the credit and become the thought leader in it, where in fact it's probably the other way around. But it is great to see it, you know, getting more mainstream, getting more out there, becoming more the norm in businesses and even in our own lives as well. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. But I suppose along with the benefits of lean, like obviously there are challenges in that as well. And I suppose in Tirlán, I suppose no matter the size of the organization you're in, you're going to face challenges. I suppose, like for us, the challenges that we kind of face, you know, I suppose at the base of all of this, and I'll touch on it later, is the culture that exists somewhere. And, you know, in a large organization, you know, shifting the dial on a culture to be more, you know, excellence focused is difficult to do. Because when you say culture, it's such a invisible, intangible thing. People kind of prefer to have, you know, something in their hands essentially. So like, I suppose lean typically would kind of start off with the tools that you bring in, but like the tools will only succeed as far as, you know, the culture and the behaviors around actually using them kind of sustain it as well. So
yeah, and you know, culture is, it's everyone talks a lot about it being intangible, and I see people all who would know about how to go about measuring it. But while it is intangible and you can't put a ruler over it in some cases, and you can see it, but you can feel it. You can feel it in the dialogues, you can feel it in the conversations that you're having with people, in the atmosphere and the way people respond to things and the attitudes people take to their work. It really is evident, you know, even though we do always say it's intangible, we know when it's not there with it, because it's all around us, and the absence of a good culture is really clear.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, that's the one thing. If you ask someone to describe what culture is or things like that, it's very hard. But if you walk in somewhere with a good culture, you know it immediately. And likewise, then if you walk in to a bad culture, you can feel that immediately as well. Yeah. So look, I suppose in the description for this, it kind of said that our model is aligned to the Shingo model. So I said I'd just give a brief kind of overview of what that Shingo model is. So I suppose it was created 30 years ago in the US to kind of promote excellence in manufacturers over there. And I suppose it kind of provides kind of best practice approaches, I suppose, to like, again, your systems, results, tools and culture. Just kind of a fun fact, I suppose, for people maybe to have a bit of interest in it. So Ireland has the highest number of Shingo Award winners per capita of any country in the world. So it's, I suppose, an interesting fact that we're both great at Eurovision and Shingo Awards. So I'm not sure if we have a correlation there between that, or what exactly leads that.
Yeah, let's hope our Eurovision, our Shingos don't go down like our Eurovision when has gone down, or it can bounce back, or maybe we'll apply lean and Shingo principles and values to the Eurovision. Might be the way to go either.
Yeah,
it's just one, Rebecca, Michael here. It's just one. It's interesting that you put the Eurovision in with the Shingo, because in my view, the Eurovision is the one culture that has changed down through the years immensely. You know, if you look at the Eurovision 30 years ago, when Ireland was topping the charts, as opposed to, you know, you can't even go round, you can't go by the first round, you know. But yeah,
I'd say either we shifted our focus and gave up on Eurovision and started concentrating on enterprise excellence, or we need to change our approach to Eurovision.
I think Rebecca sending the turkey wasn't the brightest idea.
No.
Thanks, Michael.
No, voilà.
Yeah, look, that's the kind of background to where I suppose our Grand Designs house here came from then. So look, we have it kind of laid out in a house format. Our foundations are the culture and behaviors, our walls are the continuous improvement and business alignment, and then our roof is the results. So I suppose, look, where it's the business excellence model is our way of driving kind of organization-wide continuous improvement, using best practice, I suppose, standards, and, you know, in order to achieve business excellence overall. So we're trying to prescribe then kind of best practice approaches to how we foster that culture of excellence, how we deploy a business strategy. So I suppose our purpose, drive our continuous improvements, or our process and systems that are there. And then all of that then in order to deliver kind of sustainable results. I suppose when we talk about culture and behaviors, this is kind of, I suppose, our guiding behaviors. So this is like the values and beliefs and practices that kind of drive the way that we operate. So it's, you know, the behaviors, you know, of something observable, recordable and measurable. And we kind of break this down then into engagement, leadership, training and development, and then ideal behaviors then as well. So then when we look at business alignment, this is us kind of saying what standardized systems do we have and how well those systems are aligned to our strategy and delivering those strategic objectives then as well. So here we'd look at things like visual management, communication, strategy deployment and standard work. And then continuous improvement then, so that's our structured approach that we take to identify and implement ways to improve, I suppose, our products, services, processes. And here we look kind of at the governance, the methodology, and the ownership of continuous improvement in different areas and sites, what our structured problem solving looks like, and then the business excellence toolkit we have, and also how we're leveraging digital technology in different areas then. And then results, I suppose, if you look at the three that I've just talked about, they're probably, you might kind of describe them as leading indicators for results, which would be our kind of lagging measure then for all of those other things that have gone well, hopefully. So the results then is the tangible piece then that's coming out at the end of all of this. So we look at what the business performance, like how our strategic objectives coming along, continuous improvement process. So we should see our KPIs improving year on year if this is successful. And then business excellence performance. So this is looking at how our actual maturity assessment then is improving over the years then as well.
I always love seeing the lean or anyone's framework, and there's various different variations of it from organization to organization. But seeing the foundations being the basics, you know, I think one of the original houses, it has kind of like in the foundations, it has 5S, workplace organization and visual management, or 5S, standardization and visual management. And to see this culture and behavior as the foundation for all of this is amazing to see. I've just been through a program with Amy Edmondson for the psychological safety training, and they talk about psychological safety and culture being the soil that things grow in, as opposed to the seed or what we do. So it's almost like we're making sure that there's good soil there for success or for things to nurture in, and whether that's our lean continuous improvement, whatever initiatives we're after for quality from there as well. Yeah, that's great graphic here. What is the organization doing to improve culture and behaviors?
I suppose we kind of look, so I suppose we look at the things like engagement, training and development, the leadership, and our values and behaviors. So like training and development is probably an obvious one that people can kind of, I suppose, recognize when they hear it, you know, that we have learning opportunities for people, and that I suppose they're encouraged to pursue them and I suppose develop themselves as people. When I was chatting to you on Monday, I was delivering the first day of our in-house yellow belt course. So, you know, we
sorry about that again.
We've completed that. So yeah, it's just kind of, I suppose, that, but then engagement obviously is a bit more like, God, what does engagement look like? But I suppose, you know, it's again that there's kind of open and effective communication happening between you and your manager or whoever your kind of leader is in the area that you're working in, that you have an opportunity to share your opinion about decisions that are impacting you. So be this like town halls being held on a regular basis, that the strategy is being, I suppose, cascaded to you so that you can hear what the strategy is. And I suppose as well that there's kind of that feedback loop on it. And also it's not just this one kind of day in a year where you hear about the strategy and you never hear about it again, that you're getting the updates on it, you know how you're progressing, you're kind of invested in how things are going. And then as well, I suppose, and I know Noel Hennessy as well is very keen on, you know, even outside of work, the kind of social aspects, that it's, you know, it's not just all about the work. And, you know, in our maturity assessment, we kind of look at what social activities or engagement activities are happening. And not only that, but looking at I suppose, the attendance of them, because I suppose that's a good indicator of how engaged people are. You know, if you only have, you know, a small number of people attending maybe like a team building day, that's not a sign of a very, I suppose, engaged area, or, you know, area that people want to be part of. Whereas if you've got really strong attendance to things like that, that's a really surefire sign that these people are engaged and are involved and enjoy the work that they're doing, that, you know, they're willing to spend the time on these kind of, you know, team building, team activities kind of things as well.
Yeah, so. And you know, it's at those kind of days where you can, you know, there's loads of, you know, various definitions of culture and what it is, but it's kind of really on those days, and when you're working as well, but you start to see and meet people who have shared values, shared belief systems, shared attitudes, you know, and that's really what helps build that culture. You kind of find people who have the same approach to life as you, and then the same approach, and that helps with the way when you're trying to get things done in work as well. So yeah, a lot of great initiatives. I see Michael has commented here that there was more structure put around coaching and recognition and recognition programs from the organization there as well, which is great to see, you know, because people like to be seen and heard for the work that they do. It's great.
Yeah, and I think the being heard part is really important, because I suppose it's all fine that you have the opportunity to, you know, voice your opinion, or, you know, I suppose share your thoughts and ideas, but it's that kind of feedback loop on it then as well. Because even I suppose here I've kind of broken out the different parts that I've talked about there, and say, like in the continuous improvement piece, that it's, you know, are you providing, I suppose, improvement ideas for your area, but also that you can see that they've been implemented then as well. So it's kind of, you know, it's not just one piece that, okay, grand, we're getting continuous improvement ideas off all the guys here, but nothing's ever been done about them. So the key part is that feedback, that either it's something we can do and we've done it and we've kind of shown what we've done. Something I seen at a site visit I was at was kind of a really simple board, and it was a you said, we did kind of piece, and it was, you know, filled in with marker, and it was, I suppose, ideas that people had come up with, and then that other space then was a feedback then for what had happened with that, you know, say improvement idea or suggestion. So it's a really good, effective way. And as well, kind of using your visual management of kind of showing, here's the ideas we've got, here's what we've done. So people walking in and out, whether they're clocking in and out or gowning up to go out onto the floor, can kind of see, okay, look, I'm being heard, and these things are of value where I work. So, you know, I'm going to continue doing it.
I'm going to get you to repeat what you call that, because it's lovely and simple and lean. And I think people might have picked up the second part. I'm not sure if they picked up the first part. Tell them the name of the initiative again.
Yeah, the board was you said and we did. So one side was
how great is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a simple, you know, way of, you know, recognizing and saying to people, we've listened to you. Because listening and hearing, I had a debate with another company today about what the difference between listening and hearing. Hearing is something that happens, you know, hearing happens all the time. You're not sure what's actually being said or not, but hearing is something that happens without any kind of intentional effort. Listening is an intentional activity, and like any kind of culture is intentional. It can happen by accident, but it can be good or bad by accident. But culture is intentional, and listening is intentional. But that great, you said, we did, and making that visual as well, I think couldn't be any leaner, Rebecca. And some of the initiatives that came out of that.
I can't really talk to that one, because that was something I seen when I was on a site visit. But it is, I suppose, like, you know, we're always keen to try and figure out ways. I suppose in Tirlán ourselves, we have kind of, I suppose, what we call good save cards. So they're kind of, I suppose, more probably health and safety focused, but we do get like improvement ideas from them then as well. And, you know, you'd have a tracker, and I was in the Portlaoise depot there on Monday, and they have a really good graph up that's kind of showing, I suppose, the number of good saves that the people there had kind of put forward, and the kind of progress of the actions from them. So again, if you're walking by, you can see where, like, if your action's closed or if it's open or in progress, that kind of a way. So I suppose it's happening in a way, but just in that particular site that I'd seen, it had been formalized in a really kind of like that succinct visual way that, you know, walking past, you could see straight away people were providing suggestions, and there was that closed loop then on the feedback as well. So yeah. So I suppose
there's a lot of people here that are going to go back to their place of work with a new initiative for their visual management boards, or a way of communicating. You said we did. Hopefully it isn't copyrighted or anything like that. It's a great initiative, nice and simple. And
Not as far as I know, anyways. But
Not as
yeah,
far as you know.
steal with pride sometimes I think is necessary in lean.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so look, I suppose that's the background piece nearly to what our maturity assessment is then. So there's probably a good bit of background there, but I suppose, look, our maturity assessment then is essentially measuring that model that we've just gone through there and spoken through. And it's a self-assessment tool. So it's, say, the individual site themselves that are doing it. You know, and I suppose from that kind of point of view, you could probably say, like, you know, they're going to inflate their scores and that, but I'll go through how they can't. I can't do that in a minute. But I suppose having the maturity assessment, it allows us to kind of have nearly like a North Star where we've got a clear path of what we are working towards. So it's not just haphazard, you know, initiatives kind of coming in here and there, not really building on each other. We've got a clear path of what eventually we want to look like. And we know what good looks like because it's been benchmarked off of kind of industry best practice. So again, we've got a clear guide of what we're working towards. So we developed it in 2019, and as I said, it's aligned to the Shingo model. It's enabling kind of, I suppose, business alignment and cross-functional engagement, because again, we've the same goal of what we're all going towards, and again, you know, we can all be on different stages of the journey at different times as well, which is a real kind of, I suppose, benefit of the maturity assessment, that, you know, everyone can be on their own individual journey. And I suppose then as well, we, I suppose, can prioritize our resources to where they're kind of best needed then as well. And I will say, like, I suppose the benefit then of using the same questionnaire across all of our sites, so we can kind of see year on year, I suppose, the improvements in each of the areas. And I have an example site that I'll throw up here in a few minutes. But it is good. It's setting your kind of baseline that you can work from then year on year, and you can see, I suppose, where exactly you're making real strides in then. Which is good for maintaining momentum in, you know, continuing on the journey, because I suppose lean is, it's, you know, it's simple, but it's not easy, and it requires a lot of patience, because, you know, there's a lot of building in, you know, these tools and systems around them and sustaining them in place, and that takes a while to have them kind of bedded in before you can kind of move on and start building other things. Because again, it's that foundation piece. If you have a weak foundation, you can only build it so high before it's going to crumble on you. So you need to make sure that you're building it strong and you're building it slowly, so that it's going to sustain itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's actually a question coming in. I'm gonna Claire is gonna she can mute herself and ask you a question. Hiya, Claire. Just before you go on to the next slide.
Hi, Rebecca. My question basically is, you're kind of talking about the North Star you have and the roadmap for the maturity assessment. How would you develop such a roadmap to realise where you are along your own lean journey, and if there's different milestones, and know that you can reach them? How would you develop that? Like,
yeah, I suppose, look, it is very, like, it's a large, like, our questionnaire is 55 kind of questions, but again, it's kind of, I suppose, we had help from like external consultant Noel Hennessy, who is I suppose a Shingo assessor. So that's the support that we got there, and we kind of looked at the 4 pillars for our own model, and kind of, you know, breaking out engagement to try and make it into real terms, like what would engagement look like. So like those kind of things around, like a specific question on like the social activities. Are you getting improvement ideas coming from people on the floor? Like if people are willing to provide suggestions for their area to improve it, that means they're engaged. Whereas if they don't care what their area is like, then that's not engaged. So I would say, like, the culture questions are probably the hardest ones, but also in our questionnaire, it's actually the area that has the most amount of questions. And then each area after that has, I suppose, smaller, less amount of questions. But even like the continuous improvement section, You know, it's kind of asking about like your structured problem solving. Do you have a process in place? What does that process look like? And we have it divided up then into different levels. Is it just a bit ad hoc? Have you a system, but you're not being consistent with it? And then, you know, are you consistently sticking to that system? So it's just kind of, I think, breaking it down into individual kind of specifics, as opposed to just kind of trying to.
So if I could just try to put that in a nutshell, would you say it would be to work with a lean expert, but also with your team, and just kind of go along and make sure everything's lining up with that? Would that be a good start even?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. So look, I suppose, why are we doing maturity assessments and things like that? So looking at how maturity assessments support the excellence team then as well. So look, it's providing a baseline for all further improvements. Like if you don't know where you're starting from, you don't know how much you've improved. So actually having that baseline data as such is really important, so that you can look back on things to see how far you've come. Because again, when you're in the day-to-day of things, and you know, month to month of different kind of initiatives and things that you're improving and doing, it's very, you know, you forget where you were. So it is important to have that kind of baseline area then as well. So then we can use then the assessment to create our kind of roadmap or improvement plan then for the area. We can deploy the resources then, and as we need. So we tend to align them then with our own kind of central initiatives, and those were, I suppose, in the inside of our model house there. So the likes of our problem solving initiative and things like that. So because we're conscious as well that, I suppose, not only are we a small team across the business, but that like there's competing priorities in each of the sites. And, you know, we talked about building slowly and building strong. You don't want to overwhelm sites with too many things going on at the one time, because you won't have, I suppose, sustainable kind of habits and systems then in place. So I think that's an important one. And look, the recognition piece then as well, you know, for like looking at it year on year to see how far people have come then in their journey, because again, it's the people involved that improves that score, as opposed to just, you know, taking a test and getting a higher score, that kind of a way.
Yeah, there's a lovely graphic as well. I think just for the because I think on the call here there's people at different stages, and the maturity assessment doesn't come in at the start. Rebecca, would you agree with that?
No, I suppose you need to have something to align your maturity assessment to. So I suppose you need to know what you're trying to achieve. So I suppose we aligned ourselves to the Shingo model because I suppose we chose that one. That's not the only one that's out there, you know, like there is the Moore model, and I know Noel Hennessy has spoken about that before. So there's different models you can use for your improvement, but you probably need to know which one you're going to align yourself to, and then stick with that.
Even before that though, you were doing lean before you started to assess the maturity of lean. Would that be fair to say you had started with some projects and some initiatives?
Yeah.
And I think that's I think for those on the call, because we always get people who are at various stages of their journey, but all lean kind of calls and webinars that we have, you know, if you're starting out, you know, the first step probably is to fix the problems in front of you, and you use your basic lean tools like your 5S and your work, your 5S and your visual management and your standards to help you get started. And then from there, once those practices start to become a bit more of a habit, it's at that point then you want to start to measure your progress and bring in assessments like this as well. So it's get started first, get the support, work out what the problems are, get some baseline measurement of what's normal or what's good, or set your goals, and then from there as well. So just for those that are not quite at that same stage that you guys are at as well. Thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah. So no, I'm just going to go through, I suppose, what our process looks like, and this is just kind of it, very simply put. So I suppose at the minute we do the process with the kind of senior leadership team in a site, and it can take between kind of 2 to 4 hours to kind of complete, I suppose, these steps that we have laid out. so I suppose we agree, obviously, the date and all that that's going to happen. Before we sit down to do our questionnaire, we do a Gemba walk of the area, and it'll be the business excellence specialist for that site, plus an independent person then as well. So I think that independent view is quite important. So it's someone who's not attached to the site, kind of coming in, seeing things. They may have, the last time they've seen the site may have been the year previous for the last maturity assessment. So it acts as a really good kind of, you know, before and after photo. Like they'll see the new things that weren't there when they were there the last time, and things like that. And as well, kind of engaging with people on the floor, because look, the best way of seeing kind of how far lean is filtering in an area is if the people on the floor know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what like the different initiatives mean to them. That's a great indication of how deeply embedded all of your systems are. So that's a really important part of the maturity assessment process. Then after that, it's looking at the actual questionnaire. So I suppose there's 55 questions in the questionnaire, and we do it either in kind of an Excel format, or last year one of the sites did it as an in-person one. I'll just show you that one. So I suppose you know, you can make it an interactive workshop, or you can kind of go down through the questions, and I suppose that's kind of down to individual preferences and things like that. I suppose you would like the questions there. So I have, say, the visual management interactive one versus what we did in the Excel, and those kind of questions that are there are kind of looking at, like, are your structured problem solving tools in place? Are they trained, and are they visible? So like the visible part is very important there, because you can give training to people and they can be trained on something, so you can tick that box. But again, training's, I suppose, as valuable as much as you use that training afterwards. So it can be, if you train someone and they don't use it, it can be forgotten skills very quickly. So I suppose the sustained part of any sort of training is then the output out of it. So seeing the likes of, you know, root cause analysis templates and different kind of problem solving tools like your fishbone, seeing them in the areas as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people walking around Ireland with yellow belts that are only good for holding up their trousers, that have never done a project from it, you know. And I think for us, we always encourage anyone who's going through training almost to complete a project and get support in the completion of that project, because if not, it's, as you said, the learning's not applied, and it's more of an awareness thing than a real skill to have as well. Yeah, so important to see that. Are there any challenges with this maturity assessment process?
I suppose because it's a large chunk of time, getting it as a priority, and because it's an annual process, it's hard to keep it up on the priority list, I suppose, of a site. And then even like the output out of a maturity assessment is probably the most valuable piece that you'll get from a maturity assessment, that I suppose it's easy for it to kind of be pushed into the back of your mind that, okay, that's an annual event, I'll forget about that now until next year. But to try keep it vibrant monthly, you know, and keep it alive, because again, there's no point in doing a maturity assessment every year if you're not working on it in between times, because you're just going to be telling yourself the same story over and over again. The point of the maturity assessment is just to measure how far you've come since all that work you've done. It's the work in between that's the important part of the process.
Yeah.
So keeping that there, and keeping it, like, I suppose, on the top, not the top of the list, but keeping it relevant, and keeping the work, I suppose, tipping away at it really throughout the year, so that when you do come to spend this time, it's as we say, you know, it's not a waste, because there's no point in sitting down for the 2 to 4 hours to do an assessment that's going to tell you the same score as last year. So yeah, I think, look, it's a challenge keeping it as a priority, because there's always competing priorities. But you know, when people, I suppose, understand the point of a maturity assessment, that it's not, you know, me just coming in looking to take up loads of time for the sake of it, with them, that they see the value in it, and they know the why behind it. I think that's really important. And when people get that, you're not faced with as much challenge, I think, in the process.
Yeah, it's great. And I love the slide you have up there with the post-its and doing it in person with the in a workshop environment makes it really really interactive, really visual, and kind of stimulates that discussion as well for we really at and probably uncovers an awful lot more as well.
Yeah, and I think the discussion that each of the questions kind of prompt, that's really valuable because it allows, I suppose, site leadership to kind of take a step back from the day-to-day and look at it from an overall point of view and kind of, I suppose, look at it from a holistic point of view then as well, which I think, you know, sometimes can be hard for people because they get so stuck with, you know, whatever issue has come or different priorities that are sent down to them, you know, that they can have this kind of space to step back and look at how they're doing on this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, just one other thing I'd probably call out here. So we divide the questions from a kind of a level 1 to a level 5 kind of scale. I think I probably kind of alluded to it earlier, but I suppose I'll just go through it again that, you know, level 1, you're kind of not really looking at anything in place, you know, then it's kind of going into more ad hoc, and then you're kind of, again, you're slowly developing things into being more kind of systematic. Then that will kind of translate then into the results then that we get out of the maturity assessment. So again, I suppose you kind of see gold, silver, bronze there. It's not that we're giving out medals and different things like that to people, but I suppose it's aligned to the Shingo way of awarding their kind of medallions and things like that. And we have the scores kind of there in brackets more as a kind of an estimate to kind of, I suppose, try and translate what the score you get out of a maturity assessment actually means. So, and as well, I suppose we tend to use the categories as opposed to the scores because it allows us to communicate, you know, we have X number of sites at bronze and silver level, and it removes that kind of element of, you know, comparing your scores and kind of we really try to concentrate and focus the sites into look at your own journey. You need to, I suppose, look at how you've improved from the previous year. Don't be concerned with what the score of another site is. So kind of by using like your bronze and your silver, like it kind of, I suppose, removes those specifics a little bit more so that people can kind of focus in on where they actually are. And then we kind of show like, okay, if you're in a bronze, you know, you've got tools being used, but you're not kind of using them in that systematic way yet. And then silver, you know, you're now starting to see the systems and work, and you're getting improvements out of the systems and tools that you're using. And then gold, you know, it's okay, you've got your behaviors driving your systems and everything like that then as well. So it's just more to kind of, I suppose, what does, you know, if you tell someone you've scored a 51% in your maturity assessment, like, you know, what does that mean? So this is kind of more to bring meaning to it to people as well.
And
just on this
then
very quickly, I'll just kind of show like this is one of the sites that I work with, just the progress over the 4 years, and I've kind of put the colored lines kind of on each of the scales there for the intermediate, bronze, silver and gold, just to kind of show how they've kind of climbed up through the years. The one thing I'll point out is the massive jump from the first year to the second year. And again, that's, I suppose, you know, it's easy to make big jumps early in your process because you're moving from either not using something at all or kind of having ad hoc here and there kind of use of tools to now trying to create a system around them. And then as you go on, you know, you're trying to have deeply embedded systems that are, you know, driving your behaviors and different things like that. That becomes hard. So your progress will slow over the years, and it's important for people to kind of keep that in their mind because, you know, a 5, you know, a gold and everything like that, it's supposed to be hard to get to. It's not meant to be easy. So sometimes people can kind of lose a bit of momentum if they've seen that massive jump, and then the following year they've only gone up 4 or 5%, and they kind of go, God, why didn't we have another 20% jump like we did before? But it's good that you're making those incremental kind of improvements anyways. Yeah. So then I suppose out of, and this is the valuable part that I keep referring to, so this is your improvement plan that you kind of come up with then after the maturity assessment itself. So it shows you you'll see clearly with the scores what areas you're weaker in and what areas you're strong in. And what we do then is we kind of, I suppose, look at what this particular site needs. So it's all about right sizing it for the area that you're in. So one improvement plan for an area could be very different to a different site, you know, because their needs might be different. And again, if they're on different levels of the journey, they're going to need different specific actions then as well. What we try to do then as well is to align the work that we're doing with kind of central initiatives again, so that we don't overwhelm the resources on the site, and that we can kind of create that sustainable implementation of actions then as well, so that, you know, say the following year that the actions just happened, you know, we've done them now and then we kind of forget about them and they kind of fall off, and then a couple of years later you see that your scores are actually going back down. What you want to see is that you're maintaining and improving the scores year on year. Then for, I suppose, us within our business excellence team, like trying to sustain that progress. So we try to ensure that the maturity assessment improvement plan there is within the site's kind of project forum. That's to make sure that the maturity assessment isn't forgotten about after it's, you know, it happens and then it's kind of shelved away until next year. So it's, again, keeping it fresh, you know, on a monthly basis, keeping it in people's kind of eyesight, you know, because if you see it, it's there and you're less likely to forget about it. We monitor the implementation progress as a KPI within our own team. And again, I probably want to stress that, like, our KPI is not the scores that everyone's getting, it's how well they're doing with, I suppose, implementing the actions, because the scores don't necessarily matter to us in that everyone's at a different level anyways, but what does matter to us is that what we've set out to do with the different plants or the different sites, that we are actually doing that. So that's a KPI then within our own team to keep an eye on that. And then ourselves then as well, kind of, we will look at the maturity assessment in terms of the different improvement plans and aligning them to central initiatives again for ourselves, as well as the sites to not, I suppose, have too much going on at the one time.
I really like that part in the middle there about monitoring the implementation progress rather than the final outcome or the result, because it's the implementation or the progress steps where the behavior or the increment is done. How did you get to that point? Was it just something that was always there, or was it something that was introduced primarily as part of the lean deployment?
I suppose we introduced it last year, and I actually did my black belt project around the maturity assessment progress. So this was one of the kind of pieces that came out for me, that we needed something to monitor and keep the maturity assessment, I suppose, alive outside of the annual kind of process that happens. So again, like, we don't want people to be focused on the scores that they're getting. We just want them to kind of, I suppose, look at the improvement that they've made from the year previous, but then that they kind of keep the work going. So I suppose this was kind of our, what would you call, like a control measure nearly, to make sure that out of the maturity assessment process that this was being sustained and been regularly actioned and looked at as well. So yeah, this is kind of where that came from. So it's only it comes back to what,
but it comes back to your initial slide with the behaviors piece at the start. And I think so many organizations and teams, we measure results or we measure outcomes without actually looking at the step behaviors that influence them and measuring those, because practice tells us if you do this sequence of behaviors or actions, you will get this result. If you followed a standardized approach and you didn't get the result you wanted, then you check the standard and look to improve it through various different approaches as well. But measuring the behaviors or checking in on the behaviors, yeah, it ultimately is that control part of our DMAIC or our sustain part of our 5S. So it's great to see it being implemented at this scale. You talked earlier as well about this riddlelessness that I think as lean practitioners, especially when we're starting out and you're experiencing this, trying to get things across the line, you've got to be that bit, be relentless. don't you? And just keep coming back at it, even when it doesn't work. How have you found that in your role, going out to people and trying to say, look, guys, stick with it, it'll work.
Yeah, and I suppose it can be a tough part as well, because as well, like I spoke earlier about the patience element, and some people will want to see their results immediately, and if they're not seeing the results, straight away, that's it, that didn't work for me, I'm throwing it out. But you need to kind of, I suppose, be that person to kind of guide and show them the bigger picture, I suppose, of the sustainable process, bring them on the journey with you as much as you can. I think, like, I don't know, a great deal of diligence and persistence really from my part, I suppose, to make sure that everyone stays on track, and keeps going with it. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It absolutely is diligence and persistence. And I mean, I see it in companies we work with, and I see it in myself and our team when we're going to work with companies. You can go back week in, week out, month in, month out, and be having the same conversation. And then at some point it clicks, but you got to keep going back and having that conversation. And even if that person's not for change and not for turning, I think you just go back and you just reference that, well, look, if we did things this way, but look, I'm not going to have that debate with you now, but my thoughts on it. And you just keep going back to the point, from time to time, making sure that you don't let up on it, because that's our role there, is to kind of bring experience and, I suppose, and good practice. A great point in from Michael here, about that monthly monitoring gives everyone the opportunity to adapt and possibly change direction. And look, that's what we're all about. We're all about incremental change, and then being able to respond to that as well. So yeah, really well put there, Michael, as well. I think what you've talked about, and as you've described things in Tirlán and for yourself as well, is that you're trying to get this growth mindset, the concept of a growth mindset, into everyone, and try and embed organizational growth mindset in, where kind of believe that with hard work and with effort and with intentional steps, we can do better, we can achieve more, we can go faster, we can reduce defects, we can improve yield, we can achieve all of these, and by putting a focus on it, and it's with our own abilities and skills that we can do it as well. So I mean, listening to you talk today, and I'm sure everyone will agree with this, you can hear the culture in Tírlán, especially from yourself and your team, and how that's mirrored down, so you can really hear it as well, which is great in big companies like that as well. So I keep chatting and coming in with chats. You've one more slide.
You're okay. No, I'm done now, actually. So
oh, you're done.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, geez, we couldn't have timed that any better. Beautiful sunset. Tell me where the picture's from.
It's near Mount Leinster.
Okay.
So on the Carlow Wexford border there. Yeah.
Did you take it?
No,
it's a company. Jesus, yeah, it looks like some hill to climb. Yeah, no, Rebecca, thank you so much. It's been amazing to hear from you. I'm sure everybody on the call might give you a virtual round of applause if you can find your symbol. Yeah, Claire, Rebecca, it was great, and I said I love, you're talking about this practical set of tools that are there that you're using, measuring practices, and yet we can hear right the way through, how culture and behavior and attitude is evident, at least from yourself in it as well. Thank you so much for that, and for taking the time to share with us today. Guys, if anyone has any questions, you can pop them in the chat, and if we don't get to, if Rebecca can fire off emails to any of them from there as well. Just in terms of, thanks Rebecca, just in terms of next month, and the buzzwords, if I can find it, this is Rebecca. Next month for Never Mind the Buzzwords, we have the workplace. Ooh, apparently I was told to pronounce it, which should we be designing workplaces to evoke emotions, with Becky Turner, who will be joining Julie on the 10th of May at 11 a.m. I think Andre is going to pop in a link to that as well, if he hasn't done so already. And that'll go out in the link to the book that will go out in the email as well. So that's the workplace, redesigning workplace to evoke emotions as well. But guys, apart from that, I will let you go. It's just gone 12 o'clock. Thank you so much again to Rebecca for your time. Thanks to everyone for attending, and hopefully we'll see you all again in the near future. Thanks, Rebecca.